Your unconditional love is her weapon. You believe it is a testament to your strength, your depth, your capacity for devotion. You are wrong. It is the raw material she uses to build her empire of control, and the very foundation of your prison. She did not fall in love with you. She identified you as a sustainable source of energy, an endless well of validation, support, and emotional regulation from which she could draw at will, without ever needing to replenish the source. You are not her partner. You are her life support system. She hasn't left you, has she? Of course not. A parasite does not abandon a healthy host. Instead, she keeps you in a carefully calibrated state of uncertainty, a purgatory of hope and despair. One moment, you are bathed in the warmth of her affection, a fleeting glance, a soft touch, a whispered promise that feels like salvation. You are plunged into the freezing void of her indifference. The unanswered texts, the vacant stares, the casual cruelty disguised as a joke. Did you truly believe this cycle was a natural rhythm of a complex relationship? Or was it the calculated intermittent reinforcement of a master trainer domesticating an animal? She isn't inconsistent. She is strategic. She gives you just enough to keep you alive, just enough to make you crave more, but never enough for you to feel secure. Your emotional starvation is her primary tool of command. Think back to that last time you felt truly powerful in her presence. You can't, can you? Your memories are a gallery of your own concessions. Remember that evening you planned for weeks? The one where every detail was a monument to your affection. You waited. The clock ticked past the hour, then another. When she finally arrived, she carried the dramas of her world with her like a storm front, barely acknowledging the world you had built for her. She offered a hollow, distracted compliment, her eyes already scanning the room, her mind 1,000 miles away. And you, instead of holding your ground, instead of letting the silence condemn her disrespect, you rushed to fill it. You asked about her day. You absorbed her manufactured chaos. You became her emotional janitor, cleaning up a mess you didn't create, abandoning your own needs on the floor. In that moment, you didn't just lose the evening. You surrendered a piece of your sovereignty. You taught her that your efforts were cheap and your time was disposable. The great, pessimistic philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer would have sneered at your romantic delusions. He saw through the charade centuries ago. He argued that what we call love is often nothing more than the biological will to power, a primitive, selfish drive dressed in the finery of poetry and affection. It is nature's grand deception, a beautiful mask worn by a brutal instinct to use another for one's own ends. You thought you were engaging in a sacred union of souls. From her perspective, it was a transaction. She was acquiring an asset. And as with any asset, she intends to drain it of all value before discarding the empty husk. She doesn't see your sacrifice as a gift. She sees it as the expected return on her initial investment of charm and feigned vulnerability. This is the devastating epiphany that you must now face, the cold, hard clarity that will either shatter you or set you free. You do not have a partner. You have a warden. An emotional vampire who has attached herself to your very life force, siphoning your ambition, your confidence, and your will to exist, leaving you a hollowed-out shell of the man you once were. You have been meticulously groomed to be her primary source of narcissistic supply, a constant stream of admiration and energy to feed an ego that is a bottomless pit. Sanity has been questioned, your reality distorted, your very identity dismantled piece by piece until you no longer recognize the man in the mirror. Ghost haunting the ruins of your own life. But what if those ruins could become a fortress? What if the very silence she uses to punish you could be forged into your most devastating weapon? The game is not over. It has simply reached the stage where you must stop playing by her rules and begin writing your own. This brutal truth resonates in the silent chambers of your own experience. Then you have found your command center. This is not a place for consolation. It is a tactical briefing room for the war of the mind. Subscribe to Psychological Dominion. Activate all notifications, because every lesson is a weapon you cannot afford to miss. Give this video a like to signal that you are no longer a willing casualty. And in the comments below, declare the city or country you are watching from. Let us build a map of our new empire of the mind, and tell us the one word, just one, that describes the moment you finally understood the game was rigged. Your war for sovereignty begins now. Let's dissect your downfall. Not with sympathy, but with the cold, detached precision of a surgeon examining a corpse to determine the cause of death. Your authority did not vanish overnight. It was not stolen from you in a grand, dramatic betrayal. It was surrendered, piece by piece, in 1,000 silent transactions where you chose comfort over respect. You bled out so slowly, you didn't even notice the wound. The first phase was emotional concession. It began with something you mistook for kindness, for the noble act of a loving partner. She had a bad day. She was stressed. She was upset about something trivial, and she manufactured a storm in the calm harbor of your evening. Your mistake was not in listening, it was in taking responsibility. You saw her emotional dysregulation as a problem for you to solve. You became the soothing balm, the patient mediator, the rock against which her chaotic waves could crash. She tested. You yielded. Every time you placated an irrational outburst, you taught her that her emotions held veto power over reality, over your plans, over your peace of mind. You rewarded instability with attention, and like any conditioned organism, she learned to produce the behavior that got the reward. Schopenhauer would not call this love. He would call it the domestication of a weaker will by a stronger one. You thought you were being a good partner. You were, in fact, an excellent trainer, teaching her precisely how to control you. From there, you spiraled into the next phase, the loss of control. Your home, your relationship, your own mind ceased to be your territory. The emotional thermostat was now firmly in her hand. If she was happy, you were permitted to feel a fragile, temporary relief. She was displeased, a palpable chill descended upon the entire environment, and you, the frantic servant, would scurry about, trying to find the source of the draft. Remember that weekend you were looking forward to? A project you wanted to work on, a game you wanted to watch, a moment of simple, quiet solitude. But she was in a mood. She wasn't overtly demanding anything. She didn't have to. Her silence was a thick, suffocating blanket. Her sighs were tactical detonations. Her presence filled the room with a heavy, unspoken accusation. And so, you abandoned your plans. You put aside your needs. You hovered around her, asking, "What's wrong? Talk to me. What can I do?" You failed to understand a fundamental law of power. Her silence is dominion, not disinterest. By begging her to speak, you were acknowledging her control. You were a prisoner rattling the bars of your cell, pleading with the warden for a crumb of information. The correct move was to ignore the performance, to put on your headphones and focus on your work, to go out and meet your friends, to demonstrate that her emotional state was her own responsibility and had zero influence over your world. But you didn't. You showed her that her moods were your master. This led you inevitably to the desperate, undignified state of validation seeking. Your self-worth became intrinsically tied to her approval, which she learned to dispense with the calculated scarcity of a drug dealer. The love bombing from the beginning was replaced by an economy of intermittent reinforcement. A rare compliment would feel like a banquet. A moment of affection would feel like salvation. You started performing for her. The gifts you bought were no longer expressions of generosity, but pleas for a positive reaction. The favors you did were not acts of service, but investments you hoped would pay dividends of kindness. You outsourced your sense of self. You looked into her eyes to see if you were a good man, if you were worthy, if you were enough. This is the moment you ceased to be a man and became a mirror, existing only to reflect her own inflated image back at her. She tested you, and you failed. You showed her that she held the key not just to your happiness, but to your very identity. And so you arrived at the final, pathetic stage, complete emotional dependency. Her existence became the central pillar of your own. Your fear of her leaving, of her disapproval, of her anger, was the gravitational force around which your entire life orbited. You walked on eggshells. You filtered your words. You second-guessed your own thoughts before they were even fully formed, running them through a mental simulation of how she might react. When you were with your friends, were you truly present? Or were you checking your phone, anxious about the silence from her end? When you achieved something at work, Was your first feeling pride? Or was it a nervous anticipation of how you would present this news to her to get the correct response? This is the abyss. This is the point where her will has completely supplanted your own. You are no longer an independent entity. You are a satellite, a peripheral, an accessory to her life. No one is coming to save you. Because the person who was supposed to save you, the man you used to be, was sacrificed long ago on the altar of her ego. You might be telling yourself this is an exaggeration. You might be thinking, but relationships are about compromise. You are confusing compromise with surrender. Compromise is when two sovereign powers meet at a negotiating table to find a middle ground. What you have been doing is unilateral disarmament. You are the only one making concessions. Think about it. When was the last time she genuinely compromised on something that was important to her for your sake? When was the last time she put your needs, your peace, your desires before her own emotional whims? The memory isn't there, is it? Because the transaction has only ever flowed in one direction. Or perhaps you object, but I was just trying to avoid a fight. I wanted peace. You didn't get peace. You got a temporary ceasefire on her terms. You traded the short-term discomfort of confrontation for the long-term cancer of resentment and disrespect. Every time you backed down to keep the peace, you were simply funding the next war. You taught her that if she escalates, you will fold. You taught her that the threat of her displeasure is a weapon that works every single time. And so, she uses it, constantly. The fall doesn't happen during the shouting matches. It happens in the silent moments before, when you decide to say yes when you mean no. It happens when you apologize for something that was not your fault. When you apologized for her being upset at a boundary you tried to set, you signed your surrender. You handed her the official deed to your sovereignty. This pattern is a virus. It infects every area of your life. At work, you're the one who takes on extra tasks without extra pay because you want to be seen as the good guy, avoiding the conflict of saying no. With friends, you're the one who always accommodates, whose opinion is asked last, if at all, because you've conditioned them to know you will go along with the group. She didn't create this weakness in you. She identified it. She is a predator who found a weakness in the herd and exploited it to perfection. She saw your desire to please, your fear of conflict, your romanticized notion of self-sacrifice, and she realized she had found the perfect host. The time for delusion is over. It is time to see the chessboard for what it is. If you are finally ready to stop being a piece and start being a player, then your training begins now. Subscribe to Psychological Dominion and activate all notifications, for each video is a lesson in the art of mental warfare. Give this a like to signal your declaration of independence. Now answer this in the comments and be honest with yourself. What was the one harmless joke she made at your expense that you laughed at, but which secretly felt like a knife twisting in your gut? That was a loyalty test, and your laughter was the wrong answer. Acknowledge it now, and let's begin the work of reclaiming your throne. There is no going back for the weak. There is only the construction of the new. Let that sentence burn itself into your mind, because it is the first law of your new reality. The man you were, the accommodating, self-sacrificing, hopeful romantic, is dead. He was a casualty of a war you didn't even know you were fighting. Do not mourn him. Do not try to resurrect him. Any attempt to go back to that state of being is an act of self-betrayal, a willing return to the prison cell whose door now stands ajar. Reconstruction is not emotional. It is tactical. It is the cold, deliberate assembly of a fortress on the ruins of a cathedral. This is your first command briefing. Your orders are simple, direct, and non-negotiable. First, you will cut the excess. This is not a negotiation with your feelings. It is a surgical amputation. The primary excess is her. You will sever all non-essential contact. This is not a dramatic announcement. There will be no final, tearful confrontation. Grand gestures are for the weak. They are a plea for a reaction. Your departure will be a silent, inexplicable vanishing. You will become a ghost in her system. This installs the first pillar of your new power, scarcity. She operated on the principle of your constant availability. You were a utility, always on, always there to be drawn from. By cutting the supply without warning, you create a vacuum. A parasite cannot survive without a host. By removing yourself, you are not just leaving. You are initiating a starvation protocol. She will be forced to confront the void where your energy used to be, and it will terrify her. Cutting the excess also means turning the knife inward. You will amputate the weak parts of your own psyche. The hope she will change, the nostalgia for the love-bombed mirage, the guilt that has been programmed into you. These are phantom limbs, aching for a body that no longer exists. They must be cauterized. Second, you will install the silence. Her greatest weapon was your emotional response. Your anger validated her power to provoke. Your pleading validated her power to withhold. Your joy validated her power to grant affection. You were a finely tuned instrument on which she played the symphony of her ego. From this moment forward, that instrument is broken. You will learn that not responding is a position of absolute dominance. When she sends the inevitable barrage of texts, first charming, then confused, then demanding, then enraged, you will meet them with a void. Each unanswered message is a brick in your new fortress. You must understand what is happening psychologically. Her provocations are a search for a signal, a desperate ping into the darkness to see if her control mechanism is still online. Your silence is not passive. It is an active denial. It is a message more powerful than any words you could write. You no longer have access to my nervous system. Your actions have no effect here. You are irrelevant. Be an absence that weighs, not a presence that begs. Let her exhaust herself against the wall of your indifference. Let her scream into the void. The void will not answer. Third, you will control the reaction. In situations where contact is absolutely unavoidable, you will become a gray rock. Think of a stone. It is uninteresting, unmovable, and gives nothing back. Your interactions will be minimal and unpredictable. They will be stripped of all emotional data. She asks how you are. The answer is, fine. She tries to bait you with a passive-aggressive comment. The answer is a nod, or no answer at all. She relays a piece of dramatic news. The answer becomes a logistical, unfulfilling chore for her to interact with. A narcissist craves supply, admiration, fear, anger, passion. They are addicted to emotional energy. You will give her none. You will become the human equivalent of unflavored oatmeal. This calculated indifference, this stoic refusal to engage, is the most devastating weapon you possess. It is not about being mean. It is about cutting off the drug supply. An addict deprived of their substance does not get stronger. They become frantic, desperate, and weak. You are not trying to win an argument. You are making yourself the most unfulfilling target she has ever encountered, forcing her to seek her supply elsewhere. Arthur Schopenhauer saw the world as the manifestation of a blind, ceaseless, striving force he called the will. This will is the engine of existence, a relentless desire to be, to consume, to dominate. What you called love was simply her will overpowering yours. Your reconstruction is the awakening of your own will. Schopenhauer would argue that you are not being cruel or manipulative. You are simply ceasing to fight against the fundamental nature of reality. You are shedding the debilitating illusion of romantic altruism and embracing the truth that life is a contest of wills. Her will fed on yours. Now, your will must learn to stand on its own, and then to impose itself on your environment. This is not a path of hope. It is a plan of action. You are not trying to reconquer her affection. Do not reconquer. Replace with a sharper silence. This energy you are now preserving, this vast reservoir of emotional and mental power that was once drained daily by her manufactured dramas, must be reinvested. This is the fourth and most critical phase. A total and ruthless focus on building your own hierarchy. Your new life is a corporation of one, and you are the CEO. Every action must be judged by a single metric. Does it increase your power? You will redirect your focus into 4 pillars. The physical. You will go to the gym not to look good for her, but to build a body that is a physical manifestation of discipline and strength, a presence that commands space before you even speak. The financial. You will attack your career or business with a singular focus, not to buy her things, but to build a throne of resources and influence so high that she could never hope to reach it. The social. You will cut ties with weak, sycophantic friends who enabled your submission and build a new circle of powerful, ambitious men whose respect must be earned. And the symbolic. You will read, you will learn a skill, you will master an art. You will build an inner world so rich and complex that her trivial dramas seem like the ramblings of a child. A man who wants to be loved will be discarded. A man who imposes his presence will be feared. And in this world, fear is a more reliable currency than affection. This is the blueprint for your resurrection. It is old, it is difficult, and it will require a level of discipline you have not yet accessed. The man you were is gone, and this is the only way forward. If you are ready to stop being a casualty and start being a strategist, then subscribe to Psychological Dominion and activate all notifications. Every piece of intelligence we provide is critical for your campaign. Give this video a like as a signal that you have received your orders and are ready to execute. Now, for your first mission. In the comments below, declare the one single thing you will do in the next 24 hours to begin cutting the excess. Will you block her number? Will you delete the photos? Will you make the call that starts your new business? Declare your first tactical move and commit to it in front of a global army of men who are on the same path. Your empire will not build itself. Begin now. And so, the silence descends. Not the tense, fragile silence you once endured in her presence, but a new kind of silence. A sovereign silence. A silence that is a territory, a fortress, a kingdom of one over which you are the absolute monarch. This is the final stage, the endgame where you do not win. You simply render the game obsolete. You have walked off the board. She can move her pieces all she wants. They will only ever meet empty squares. She has, of course, attempted to breach the walls. The cycle was as predictable as the seasons. First came the breadcrumbs of affection, the casual thinking of you texts, the old inside jokes deployed like probes into the darkness, designed to test the lock on your cage and see if it's still open to her touch. Met with the void of your non-response, the tone shifted. Confusion. Is everything okay? I'm worried. This is a guilt-laced weapon, engineered to trigger your old programming as the caretaker, the fixer. But the caretaker is dead. His ashes have fertilized the soil of your new empire. Your silence held. Then came the indignation, the entitlement. I don't deserve to be ignored. The least you could do is answer. Her accusations were artillery shells falling on an empty field. She was fighting a ghost, raging against an echo. Finally, the storm broke. The rage, the insults, the attempts to rewrite history, painting you as the villain, the cold-hearted monster. In that moment, you saw it with perfect, chilling clarity. She wasn't angry that you were gone. She was angry that her power was gone. Her words were not an attack on you. They were the death rattle of her control. Schopenhauer would have recognized this final act not as an emotional drama, but as a pure contest of wills. Her will, desperate and flailing, seeking to re-establish its parasitic connection, to feed on your reaction. Your will, for the first time in this dynamic, not reacting, not engaging, not even resisting, but simply being. By refusing to participate in the cycle of desire and suffering she represents, you have achieved the closest thing to freedom the philosopher believed was possible, the denial of the will's frantic striving. You have not defeated her will. You have made it irrelevant by mastering your own. Trapped in the cycle of wanting, needing, and consuming. You have stepped outside of it entirely. You have achieved a state of philosophical peace through strategic warfare. This was never a game you could win by her rules. The board was rigged from the start. Your every move was anticipated, your every sacrifice used to fortify her position. The winning move was not to play. You have not checkmated the queen. You have flipped the entire board over, scattered the pieces across the floor, and walked out of the room without a backward glance. The game is over because you have declared it so. Let her sit there amidst the wreckage, staring at the toppled king, wondering how she lost a game her opponent wasn't even playing. You are no longer a player in her drama. You are the architect of your own reality, and in your reality, she is merely a footnote in a chapter you have already finished writing. Let go of the petty, Hollywood notion of revenge. Your vengeance is not her suffering. It is your complete and utter indifference to it. Your victory is not her downfall. It is your ascent into a realm of existence she cannot even perceive. She will spend months, perhaps years, trying to solve the puzzle of the man who simply stopped. The man who became a ghost in his own story, only to re-emerge as a king in another. She will look for you in other men and find only hollow echoes. The silence you leave behind will be a louder testament to your power than any angry word you could have ever spoken. This is your legacy. A void she can never fill. A question she can never answer. She is a warden of an empty prison, rattling the keys to a cell whose occupant has long since vanished. You now understand the fundamental law of power that governs the world of men. Respect is never given. It is never negotiated. It is never begged for. It is imposed. It is the silent, unavoidable consequence of a man who has built an empire within himself. A man whose peace is more valuable than another's chaos. A man whose absence costs more than his presence ever did. You did not leave her. You simply continued walking forward on a path of your own making, and she was not equipped nor invited to follow. The greatest revenge is not her downfall, but the fact that you won't be there to see it. Your war is over. Your reign has begun. If you are committed to this path of absolute sovereignty, subscribe to Psychological Dominion. Activate all notifications because your throne requires constant defense and intelligence. Like this video as a final salute to the man you were and a coronation for the man you are now becoming. And in the comments below, answer this one final critical question. Now that you are the sole ruler of your own mind, what is the very first law you will enact in your new one-man kingdom? Declare it, and let your word become iron.